student too. Let's get started with some introductions. So I'm Georgina Hawkins. I'm an Employee Engagement Manager for STEM within the Careers and Employability Services. And my role is to connect you students and graduates with employers to source opportunities. Over to Alex.
My name's Alex Hessian. I work as a careers consultant linked to the STEM team. My main role is working one-to-one with students like yourself through telephone, through email, and also through Adobe Connect. My role also involves working on forums and also presenting workshops and events like today. Looking ahead to next steps, after participating in the session today, I'd really encourage you to come along and have a look at our website, and we'll pop the link to this in the chat box. Once on the website, you may want to download our publication, Your Career Planning Guide. And within the first 2 chapters of that, there's lots of self-reflective activities, which is really a great way to start to kickstart your career planning. Consider attending a workshop, and we run regular workshops throughout the year. If you are interested in improving your networking skills, we run a regular workshop called Networking Woe to Networking Pro, and the next one for that is on May the 16th, a Tuesday, between 12:30 and 1:30. If you feel you want to book a careers consultation, the link will go in the chat box shortly, and you can click on the link and either choose to have a telephone appointment or email us, or you can have an appointment through Adobe Connect. Finally, if you're active on social media, please do follow us on Twitter and Facebook. And if you enjoy networking online and you're active on LinkedIn, please do consider joining TUCAM, which is our careers network group. We have over 5,000 members of current students and alumni that regularly engage in dialogue. It may also be a chance for you to tell your story and reach out to people who might actually be doing the job that you want to do. Okay, I'm going to pass you on.
Thanks, Alex. So we are going to hear from Sandra and Aaron in a little bit, but I just want to let you give the opportunity to introduce who you are. So Sandra, do you want to just briefly say who you are?
So my name is Sandra Mackenzie. I actually did my degree with the Open University while I was in my 40s, and as a result I now work for the Environment Agency. I've had a number of roles, but currently I'm working as a recruitment lead to the Links and Northants area of the Environment Agency in England. Thank you. Over to Aaron.
Hi, I'm Aaron. I'm a first-year student studying Environmental Science Integrated Masters, and I work in the environmental sector, which is why I attended before. So, hey.
Thank you both, and we will come back to you very shortly. So Alex has just given you some overviews of career resources and ways to get in touch with us. So please do use them, and hopefully they will be entered into the chat box. You will hear us mention links to the STEM faculty, because this is an event aimed at STEM students, but it was open to all. So all of these opportunities are open to all students. So just to give you a little bit more information about my role. So as I mentioned, I'm the Employee Engagement Manager within Careers and Employability Services. And I engage with organisations of all sizes. So that could be small, medium size, right up to your big organisations. And they can be based anywhere across the UK. And we do have some international links as well. So I'm linked to the STEM industry, but we do have colleagues who cover other areas such as business, law, health, education, public sectors, charities and the arts. So when you are looking for roles, we are working with lots of organisations from different industries. Part of my role is also to educate employers on who the Open University are and market our brilliant students to them. It's important that we do highlight what a large diverse cohort of students we have and how you may differ from other university students that they are used to working with. So many of you may have work experience already, and a lot of you will be career changers. This can be a huge advantage to our employers, and they do welcome these transferable skills, and that's sometimes the reason why they want to work with us. A large number of our students have declared disability, So we do discuss the importance of reasonable adjustments at recruitment stages and ask about what diversity schemes and programmes they have in place to support students once they are employed. When we do source jobs and opportunities from our employers who are actively trying to recruit OU students, we advertise them on Opportunity Hub. So hopefully a link will be posted into the chat box, and we would encourage you to start looking at this as soon as you feel ready to. And it might not be even to start looking for a job, but just to get an idea of the type of roles that are out there and available. This is a central place to look for jobs, events, resources, and careers and to book your careers consultation. But it's also not just jobs on there that are permanent. We have internships, we have insight days, insight weeks, placements, and lots of voluntary positions as well. So don't just assume it's going to be a full-time position. We've got lots of different opportunities on there. So you may be looking to gain some shorter work experience or looking for that long-term career aspiration. So the other side of my job, and something we're going to go on to talk about now, is organising and hosting events with employers. We see the value of engaging employers and getting their perspective across, because they're in it, they're working in that industry day in, day out, and they can highlight what changes are happening. So some of the events that we've run over the past year, and where possible, we will include links into the chat box. So the first one is Careers Fest. Each autumn, we do try and run a big careers event. The Careers Fest in November took place across 30 days, consisting of over 30 panels, talks and workshops that aim to help students overcome personal barriers, uncertainty and lack of work experience. We did record some of these panel events, and they're really useful to get an insight into some of the areas. So please do look at the recordings that will be posted. Employers that were involved in this 3-day event were people like Rolls-Royce, Capgemini and SSE, to name just a few. Another event we've hosted over the past 2 years, which has been really successful, is working with BAE Systems on their Capture the Flag. This is a 2-day cybersecurity challenge, which had over 200 students take part at each event. So we are hoping to run that again every year in February. So please do look out if you're interested in that. Another one, and we will go into more detail shortly, was an insight talk from the Environment Agency, and that's why Sandra and Aaron are here today, so I'll touch on this again in a minute. But this was a hugely successful event with over 160 students attending, and the link for the recording will be added to the chat box. Also been involved with Women in Engineering panels, Changing Careers. BAE Systems also did an early careers talk, and Leonardo hosts an Insight Week where they take up to 10 students for 4 days to get an insight into their organisation at their Luton site. This year, for the first time, we've been working with Microsoft and their BAME Embrace group on 3 events. These have all been recorded, and they will be available in the chat box. So this was an application top tips session, a Q&A panel, and a LinkedIn support session, all very useful. Another recording that we can share with you is breaking into the cybersecurity world. And also, for the first time since the pandemic, we hosted our face-to-face Insight Day, and this was at Alderley Park Science and Technology Park. These are great opportunities to go and visit employers face-to-face and get a feel for an organisation. But we do know that this is limited on places and locations. So we do have one that we've recorded, and that's with Diamond Light Source, and a link will be added to the chat box. So all the events I've just highlighted, I'm sorry that I've just been reeling off lots of information, but they took place previous, but we do have some coming up in the next few weeks. So the first one is discover how data skills are used in different sectors and roles. And the idea for this event is to highlight just the breadth of where data is used in lots of different industries. So we've got organisations such as Sainsbury's, Citizens Advice, Energia Group and Jacobs to talk about how they use data in their day-to-day business. So that's taking place on 18th April, and you can book your place now. There's also a FinTech panel event taking place on the 8th of June and a non-clinical roles within the NHS on the 6th of July. Both of these you'll be able to book via Opportunity Hub soon, so do keep your eye out on there. We've also got a webinar with Code First Girls talking about all their free coding workshops, and that's taking place on the 4th of July, and you can book that now as well. We've also got some of the events run by our careers consultants, which Alex did mention too, and we will pop in the chat box all of those that are upcoming. But these continue to be promoted throughout the year, so please do check on Opportunity Hub for that. And then finally, with events, we do also have one page that includes a list of all external events. So all the organisations we work with, if they're looking to host their own webinars or insight days, open days, or experiences, we put it all on one page. So this page is continually updated with events. So save that page and keep a look out, because there may be something in your area you are interested in. So as I say, sorry for waffling on, but it's now time to bring in our guests. And I'm going to start with Sandra, and we work together on the event, the Environment Agency. So I just want to ask Sandra, can you share with our audience how this collaborative event came about?
Thank you, Georgina. Yes, of course. So whilst I was working as a team leader in asset performance, one of our flood and coastal risk management teams, we were really struggling to get applicants for our jobs. And speaking to national colleagues, so there are 14 areas of the Environment Agency within England. And so collaborating with other colleagues, we realised that in an organisation of almost 10,000 staff, we had about 2,000 vacancies. So we were needing to start to promote ourselves more widely. So one idea through our educational outreach programme was to contact those universities that we studied with. And having done my degree part-time over 6 years, I was contacting the Open University, which was absolutely great. And I got in touch with Georgina, and we started to talk about what we needed as the Environment Agency and what would be good for Georgina as well. Thoroughly enjoyed all our contact, and that's how we came to put on that event.
That's brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. And my next question for you is, as an OU alumnus, how did you find working with the OU in a professional capacity, and how did you find co-hosting it?
It's quite interesting because in my professional capacity, I was actually quite nervous because I hadn't had dealings directly with a university before, and especially as I was representing the Environment Agency as an alumnus, I wanted to come across professionally and for the Open University to be proud of me as a former student. So I was actually quite nerve-wracking, but Georgina made it really easy for me, very informal and lovely to work with. So that was really good. With regards to co-hosting, first time I'd done something like that, so I was also very nervous at the time, but afterwards I was overwhelmed with the positive feedback that the students gave, which was just lovely, really helped me personally and professionally, and was really lovely to hear how well received it was. So I've actually been contacted by a colleague of mine who I'd never met before, who told me that he'd received an application from somebody who'd listened to the Insights events. So that was really nice to hear that somebody had taken that on. Yesterday, I was at a recruitment fair in Peterborough, and I was approached by an OU student who'd seen me on the Insights event, and I was able to speak to him one-to-one, which was lovely. And also I was directly contacted by Aaron, who we'll hear from just in a moment.
That's great. Thank you, Sandra. So yeah, we're going to go over to Aaron now. I forgot to mention at the beginning of the session, if you do have any questions, pop them in the chat box and we will try and get to them if time permitting. We want to hear your thoughts. So yeah, over to Aaron. How did you find out about the event, and what was your experience of attending?
Hi, so I found out about the event, I think, just by exploring on the website, and it caught my attention. I saw the Environment Agency, which was already on my radar of places that I was interested to work for potentially in the future. So when I saw this brilliant event to find out about what it's like to work at the Environment Agency. I thought, great, perfect, that's fantastic. So I made a note in my diary to make sure I wouldn't miss it. And yeah, I was able to take part from my work vehicle, parked by the field. Luckily, I had the internet connection. So yeah, it was brilliant.
That's brilliant. And I think that's the point of online events, isn't it? We can just log on anywhere at any time. And yeah, if it takes a little bit of time, but it is valuable there. So you attended the event and then reached out to Sandra after she's just mentioned. What made you reach out to her?
I reached out because it can sometimes be quite difficult to get in touch with the relevant people and find out those really useful details about a role that you may be interested in. So having that opportunity to get in touch with Sandra and ask a few questions and just find out if other useful bits of information, like Sandra was able to provide me with another email address for a relevant team within the Environment Agency that I'll be contacting to find out more details about the sort of specific things that I'm interested in. So that was really, really useful for me.
That's brilliant. So I can hear that there's a lot that you got out of it from just listening and finding out about the Environment Agency, but then also going that extra mile and getting another contact. So you got quite a bit out of it. Just to go back to Sandra, as an employer, what did you get out of the event? Oh, we might have lost Sandra. I know her internet was a little bit shaky.
So as an employer, the ability to actually talk directly to a group of students. Oh. Hiya, can you hear me now?
We can, yes. Sorry, I think it was just a bit delayed.
Now? I can still hear you. Okay. It will be my internet. Apologies. I'm actually in a log cabin in the woods, so apologies for that. Yes, the great thing as an employer is to be able to get in front of the very people we're looking for. And with regards to Open University students in particular, these students have a lot more extra skills and experience than perhaps your regular student leaving university and looking for their first job. So particularly people who are studying later on in life have got so many, such a lifetime of experience and skills from other jobs. And that is just really invaluable, really makes a better application and a better student for us. So to be able to talk to up to 160 people in one go was just remarkable and such a great way for us to promote ourselves. Thank you.
Yes, we'll see if questions are going to come through, but I suppose, Aaron, for you, you're quite early into your studies, you're in the first year. What do you see as the advantages of kind of engaging with the career service so early on? And it might not be particularly for a job straight away, but
I think it's very helpful. The more information you can glean about stuff that you may want to do, or it can just help you plan the sort of activities that you're doing at the time. Maybe your module selection, it might influence that. So just knowing as much as possible about different opportunities can just really help you sort of pick and choose what you're going to do, which direction you're going to head in, and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And for you, Sandra, so when opportunities are coming up, like the advantages now of working with the Open University and hoping to see applications come through, the impact you've mentioned about an employer, one of your colleagues getting in touch, the impact on an organisation, it could be immediate, but it could also be kind of long-term as well.
Yes, most definitely. So we do traditionally have quite a long period of time between putting out an application and getting somebody through the door. So it's never too early to start applying for jobs. You can always contact the recruiting manager and just see when they're expecting the vacancy to start. And you might be pleasantly surprised that they might wait a couple of months for you to finish your studies, if that's what you want to do, if you are the right candidate. So always contact the recruiting manager before you make your application. They can give you extra information about the job, which you can use in your application, or in our case, they can give you the capability dictionary so that you can understand a little bit better how to make your application score well.
And I can see Alex nodding. She's probably thinking of but probably want to come in with the STAR technique that is something that we recommend to all students when applying.
Yeah, sorry, no, I was definitely completely agree with what you're saying there, Sandra. And the STAR technique, Georgina, is the situation, task, action, result, which is a technique that you probably have heard of, and it's a structure really to answer interview questions or competency-based questions. So you describe the situation, the task that you had to do, and always emphasize your role in that, the action that you took, and the result. Even if the result wasn't favorable, it's about how you then move on with that. Even if you've made a mistake, it's about then how you learn from that and move on. But definitely, yeah.
Brilliant. So I can see a question we've had come through, and this is around age, and every event we do we always have a question around age, and I think it's great to answer. I'll probably send this one to Sandra. So they've asked, I'm a mature student, and by the time I finish my studies I'll be in my mid-50s. Can I be hopeful to get a job in my field? We don't know what the field is, but I think it's regardless of the field.
Yes, so I'm pleased to tell you that age is a protected characteristic, and therefore nobody can judge you based on age. Also, the way we look at applications is we blind sift based on the capability answers. So when we're looking at your answers, we're not able to even see how old you are. We'll be able to see your previous work history, but not how many years you've been in a job. So you could end up with a student who, an application that has 6 previous work experiences. That could be somebody who temped 2 weeks each over a period of about 3 months, or it could be somebody who's got 40 years work experience in 6 jobs, but we can't see that. So that's the beauty of it. If you get the answer right and you pass the bar and you're selected in the for interview, you'll be selected based on your answers, not on your age. I was age 48 when I joined the Environment Agency, and at the time I joined, there was one colleague in their 50s, somebody else in their 40s, and 3 younger people, all who'd got through in one go. So we've also found that during COVID, a lot of people retired early, and we're actually really struggling for older people who've got experience. So actually, almost at the moment, it's potentially an advantage, although I appreciate we don't get to see it, but that kind of thing comes through an interview and is a real strength. If you imagine yourself, if you were looking for somebody and it was a 21-year-old who'd not had a full-time job before, but had a degree, compared to somebody who's got years of experience and has got a recent degree, I think you'll see the value in somebody older, a mature student, or somebody doing a career change can just bring so much from what they've done before. And some of our jobs, such as team leading, really isn't suitable for a first job for anybody anyway. So we've got lots of roles that are really looking for older people. So 100% I recommend please put in some applications. Don't be put off if you don't get through the first one. Contact somebody like myself. I can give you some feedback on your application if you can't get through to the recruiting manager themselves. And people like myself are ready to work with you to make sure you can give of your best application and get you through to an interview. So just as a little aside, it wasn't OU, but I was contacted by a lady who'd moved to the country, and I got involved with her. I brought her to my local office, showed her around the office, gave her some information on how to apply. She'd applied for, I think, 4 posts and didn't get through. After speaking to me and I helped her with her application, she's now got 2 interviews. Now, I'm not doing her interview, I'm helping her get through that really bizarre stage, get past that barrier from a big corporate thing to get you in front of the recruiting panel. And you know, that's the offer that I've given to Georgina, that will work with anybody. I know I'm looking in Lincolnshire and Northamptonshire, but if Georgina gets in contact with me, I can either put you in touch with local people to where you're going, or we can even help on occasion if you're struggling to get through. So please don't be put off, please apply. We really do want you. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandra. And I know Sandra's just talking on behalf of the Environment Agency there. The number of organisations I work with and my colleagues, that age is not a barrier. And if you look on BBC News this week, there was a great article about it. And me and my colleague are currently writing a blog on it. So that will be available in Career soon. I just want to pull Aaron into this, because I hope you don't mind, but saying that you're a mature student and how you feel about that, and your confidence levels around that.
Sorry, what? About what? Sorry, I didn't.
About, well, you're working now, but you might look at changing jobs in the future. So, and being a mature student.
Yeah. Let me find my words.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I think don't be afraid to reach out to people, ask questions. I've got a few jobs in my past just from knocking on doors and phoning people up. So it's definitely worth going the extra mile and speaking to people, because you never know what might come of it.
Oh, that's really helpful. Thank you. Alex, the next question will probably be for you. What types of things do you help with in a one-to-one consultation?
It's very, thanks, Georgina. I mean, it really does depend what the student brings to the consultation, because one of the things we definitely do is that we pass the ownership of the consultation over to the students. So we will ask them how they want to use the time that they're going to spend with us. So it's certainly not my agenda, what I take someone through. It's very much from the student's perspective. I mean, generally, and it is very generally, we all start with this, where the student is. So, you know, your current situation, and also the concern or the reason that you've made the appointment. So we might be talking about barriers that a student might have. We might have a student who has no idea what they want to do and doesn't know where to start. I spoke to a student like that yesterday. It might be a student who is struggling to get to interview, and so we might spend some time looking at their CV or application forms. It might be a student who has an interview and would like to go through a mock interview, and we can do that as well. It might be a student who is struggling to know where to look for opportunities, and so we might take them through resources like Opportunity Hub and show them how best to maybe sort of look at opportunities as well. So it really does depend. And I always say to a student, there is absolutely no such thing as a daft question when it comes to conversations with the careers team. So even if you think, I don't really know what I want to talk about, but I know that I should be talking about my career, that's fine too. So just make an appointment. That's my advice.
Thank you. And the next question, so we've got somebody who's studying part-time. Should you engage with the careers team in your first years, or should I wait until closer to graduation? Alex?
Well, the answer to this one, Georgina. As soon as possible. I mean, we really encourage students to get in contact with us as soon as possible. By talking to somebody at stage 1, it could be that they need to start looking at voluntary work or work experience, and we have the luxury of time to spend that with them, which is so much more that you can do than maybe if somebody comes at stage 3. Although there's no problem if you come at stage 3 as well. My advice really would be, to start looking around and to get in contact with us as soon as possible. You're less likely to make a rushed decision and more likely to make an informed decision if you start thinking about these things early on. So don't feel that you have to wait until you're partway through your degree, or that you're coming towards the end of your degree or qualification before you speak to us. And we always say the earlier the better.
Yeah, and I would totally echo that. With working with organisations, that we know a lot of students will be working either part-time or full-time, and then you're doing your studying on the side, and we educate our employers to say this is what students are doing, and we ask, is there any opportunity for them to join and start in organisations before they've qualified? So if you were maybe in the traditional route of 18 to 21 going to Brick University, the majority will do their studying full-time and go for jobs at the end of their degree. But we are finding that a lot more are looking to change, especially career changers, change career earlier before they graduate. And it is such a huge benefit to organisations, because you can put those skills that and learning that you're doing live into practice, because you can then do your study and then experience it in the workplace. It may mean going in at a lower level to an organisation or taking a slight pay cut. But we have heard from many OU alumni that when they have done that, their chances of getting pay grades, going up in the pay grade scales, is a lot quicker, especially by the time that they've finished their studies. So don't put off applying for a job until you get to your degree, unless it is something like a graduate scheme where they say you need to have completed a degree. But if it is just for a job, and Sandra might back me up here, that there's going to be roles where organisations are happy for people to be studying alongside and work with the organisation.
Yes, Georgina. In fact, here at the Environment Agency, we're big believers in flexible working. So you could do, for example, a full-time job, which for us is 37 hours. You can apply to do it as compressed hours. So you do 37 hours over 4 days, leaving you a day to study without having to go down to sort of 30 hours to fit that in. We also do things like a 9-day fortnight. So that's the equivalent of half a day a week. And then we have a very healthy leave allowance, and also flexi time and take an extra day off studying that doesn't affect your annual leave allowance. So we've got lots of things like that. We also have a banked leave scheme, so you can bank 5 days of your annual leave a year, and in the third year take 15 days. So if you needed some study time, you can actually do that as well. So there's lots of ways of plan around flexible working.
Thanks for highlighting that, and that is a key one, that organisations, especially since the pandemic, are offering that flexible working approach. I don't know if you have flexible working, Aaron, in your line of work.
Yes, I work 4 days over 5, have Fridays off, which is unbelievably helpful. I think I'd struggle without it, so it's definitely worth asking the question. In fact, my employer actually suggested it to me, which I was very pleased about. So I said yes.
I don't blame you. Fellow Friday off here.
Yeah.
Next question, probably for Alex. Where do I get help submitting a work application?
You can get help submitting a work application a couple of ways. Well, you can self-serve. So we have our website, and I'm hoping that the link to that will have gone into the chat box at some point earlier, and we've got an absolute wealth of information on there around applications. We've also got Your Career Planning Guide, which is a publication which has information around how to submit successful applications. We run workshops, so do keep your eyes peeled for those, where we run workshops on things like applications, and they, as we've said earlier, they run regularly throughout the year. But also, you can come to a careers consultation as well. If you are thinking about wanting help or information about an application, we would advise that you submitted the application when you make the appointment, so you send that in as an attachment so that we could have a look at it beforehand. But yeah, so lots of different ways depending on how you learn best and what suits you best.
Lots of great top tips there. I'm going to ask you another one, Alex, but Aaron, it'd be great to hear if you've got any advice on this. So how to narrow down, decide what your career goals are, and to make a plan to move forward with those goals.
that's quite big, isn't it? I mean, it'd be really interesting to hear how Aaron did that. I mean, certainly, so if you've got a number of ideas, a really good way of narrowing them down is, and I think Aaron has done this just quite naturally, we call it informational interviewing, and it's where you maybe contact somebody who is doing the job role in the sector that you're interested in, just to spend a bit of time with them to talk about the job that they do, gain an insight to the sector, and maybe get some advice to someone who's at the stage that you're in. So it's a really good way of narrowing down goals. Another way as well is through work experience or voluntary work. And one of my colleagues calls that try before you buy. And that's where you actually get yourself into the sector, you're working with people who are doing the job that you want to do. It's obviously great for your CV, great for application forms, gives you information and resource to talk about interview, but also it's a fantastic way for you to decide whether you actually want to do it or not. So there's just a couple of ways I'd suggest.
Yeah, and Aaron, if you've got anything to add to that.
Yeah, I agree. Trying things out, very helpful. And also you don't always get to where you want to be in one step. Sometimes you have to take a few little steps and head in the right direction, or sometimes maybe not in the right direction, but it's by trying things you can discover what you like. I've relatively recently started volunteering as a scout leader, taking youngsters out climbing and caving and doing scouting type stuff, and that's been really helpful for my confidence working with people and young people. That's like another string to my bow, is outdoor activities. I was quite lucky, in fact, with the role that I'm doing at the moment. It came about a little bit by chance, and it was an outdoor role as a field technician, and I went for it because I've got heavily into outdoor activities post-COVID, and so one thing led to another, and I'm very happy with what I'm doing now. But there's definitely an element of luck, as well as being brave and having a go and not being afraid to try stuff out and make those big decisions, because it really can make the difference.
Oh, some really useful advice there, and great to hear about the scout volunteering. I'm sure that sounds very exciting. The next question I'm going to ask Alex, but
Sorry, Georgina, would you mind if I'm just
please do.
Yeah, I was just going to support what Aaron said there about perhaps sometimes taking steps. So at the Environment Agency, we have so many different teams who do so many different things, and we also have area jobs and then national jobs. So a lot of people do actually join the agency, sometimes even on a temporary contract, because once you get into the organisation, there's an internal jobs board that has more opportunities on it than an external jobs board. So there is always that opportunity, and it's one thing I spoke to the OUU student I met yesterday about. I actually did join the agency on a fixed term maternity cover contract, which felt very unnerving at the age of 48, not being sure where the mortgage payment would come from at the end of the term. But within 6 months, I'd gone through an internal one and got a permanent job. So it is something to consider. I'm not saying it's for everybody, because it can be quite nerve-wracking when you do go from maybe a permanent contract to a temporary contract, but it is another way you can take a sideways step or a different step, and then start your career from there. It's also one of the things that attracts people to the Environment Agency is they may not want to do one job for 40 years. So by joining a big organisation, they can start doing one job, learn about another team. We also have assignments within the organisation. So you can do a bit like Alex mentioned, a try before you buy. So you might take on a 6-month assignment as a team leader to see if that suits you. And if not, your other job is ready for you behind. And the only other benefit of being a nationwide organisation is you can also do a job in one area, and then if for personal family reasons or circumstances you just want to change, you move to another area of the country, you can then transfer your job under certain circumstances. I'll not bore you with the T's and C's, but we can do level grade transfers to other teams in other areas as well. So it does keep your interest over a long-term career, because you can do lots of different things as you develop as a person. Sorry to have interrupted, Georgina.
No, that was well worth interrupting. Please do. I'm just here to host it, but yes, please do interrupt. And there were some great insights there, and that is a benefit of working for a large organisation. And as we do the Open University, we have lots of secondment opportunities where you could try something for 6 months to a year, and then you've got the security of your role. But also, if you did go to work at an SME, usually in small organisations, you might get the opportunity to try different roles within yours. So sometimes they're not as set roles. So it depends what works for you, but there are lots of ways to try things. So yeah, I'm going to ask this next question to Alex, but Sandra, I definitely want to hear your input as an employer from this. So what's the best way to explain a large gap in a CV, such as maternity leave or a sabbatical?
That's an interesting one, and it's a question that we do get asked, not a huge amount of times, but we do get asked this occasionally. There are different types of CVs. So there are the chronological CV, which is really just like, a history of what you've done. But there's also something called a skills-based CV, which is particularly useful perhaps for career changes. And you'll find information out about that on our website and also in your career planning guide. A career changes, a skills-based CV will concentrate or focus on the skills that you have. And remember as well that as you were studying, you are developing skills as well. So not all your skills come from sort of paid experience. Think about all the different roles that you have in your life, as maybe as an employee, but also perhaps as a parent or a student as well. And you want to develop skills there. And so looking at maybe your transferable skills. In terms of sort of gaps within the CV, it depends very much on your personal circumstances. So you may feel comfortable perhaps putting in something that you were, raising a family, or, it depends very much on your individual circumstances. And there's no right or wrong way of putting things in a CV. Usually we would be saying concentrate on the strengths in your CV, because you're trying to demonstrate your potential. It's not just a flat narrative of what you've done previously. It's very much about the potential and what you might be able to bring to a role. So it will be really interesting to hear what Sandra thinks about this and what the Environment Agency's take on this is. I would definitely say if it's something that is concerning you, or you do have a worry about it, then I would suggest getting in contact with us, and we can talk about your individual circumstance separately. But it does not have to be a negative thing. Absolutely not.
Thank you. Yeah, I endorse what you say. So for the Environment Agency, part of the application, one of the pages actually specifically asks, do you have a gap in your employment history? And you get the opportunity to put a statement in there, but that's not seen at blind sift. So if you get through anyway, that recruiting manager won't even know that exists. If you get offered the job, then the HR team will actually come back to the line manager and say, are you happy with the gap in employment? And so you will have at some point discussed it with the recruiting manager. And I endorse what Alex just said. So let's say you took a year out traveling, which is not uncommon after degrees and things like that. I think you could demonstrate that during that time you will have had some problems that you've had to solve, so that demonstrates problem solving. If you were studying, maybe time management. If you've had a family, problem solving and time management. But even works in teams, all these different capabilities we have, communicates effectively, influences and persuades others. All these different things that are in our capability dictionary are kind of like you grow into them through life, not just through work. So whatever you did while you weren't having paid employment, I would still argue develops you as a person. And those are the transferable skills that we're always asking for. So I think you can turn these kind of things around. I'm sure there would be some gaps in employment that would be difficult to turn around, but I'm sure people like Alex are there to help you actually put a positive spin on it. But for us, definitely, it doesn't matter to us. We're just more keen about the skills and experience you bring to the role when you join us. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandra. Some great advice again there. So a question is, how do you go about asking for reasonable adjustments at the application stage? So straight back to you, Sandra, first of all, from an environment agency point of view, and then any top tips maybe from Alex for generally.
Great. So once again, part of our application form actually asks you, do you consider yourself to have a disability, or would you require reasonable adjustment at interview? Now, you're not asked to prove this. So there's no, you have to prove you have a disability. It is how you feel about it. So do you consider yourself to have a disability, yes or no? That is something that gets flagged at Blind Sift so that we can contact you to make reasonable adjustment at interview. It's not scored, so it makes no difference. It's not part of the scoring process through Blind Sift, but it does mean then that when we set up the interview schedule, if somebody perhaps needs extra time at interview, or for example, they might need a ground floor room, interview room, so we know to book the right room. We've got a lot going on with this at the EA at the moment. So, for example, there's some consideration for sharing questions in advance for people who are neurodiverse. We've also got pretty much the idea is the recruiting manager should contact you if you are being invited to interview and discuss with you what your needs are. So it might be that you actually want an MS Teams interview. You don't want to come in person for some reason. So all of these things can be discussed with the recruiting manager. We've now brought in what we call inclusive recruitment volunteers. So every recruitment manager has access to inclusive recruitment volunteer, which is somebody in the EA who's got extra training in how to make sure it's as inclusive to anybody who needs any kind of reasonable adjustment. Hopefully that answers the question.
No, that's great. And it sounds like you're really on top of that. So Alex, you want to just give anything more generally advice?
I mean, I think it's just fantastic to hear from an employer like the Environment Agency, and to hear that you do have that inclusivity, and it's great, and that hopefully should encourage students and applicants to feel confident about perhaps approaching a recruitment manager, and letting them know what their reasonable adjustments may be. So yeah, I mean, similar really. I'm not going to say much more about it apart from the idea of maybe contacting the recruitment manager to talk about it. If you, we have a podcast, I think it is, on our website around disclosing disabilities, and we've got quite a lot of information on that. A high proportion of our students do have disabilities, so it's something that we're very used to supporting. And again, back to that old chestnut, if you do need help thinking about how to word things, you're not sure, you're not confident about it, I would always advise just to get in contact with us and talk to us, and we can talk you through it.
Absolutely. And just from my point of view, that again, the amount of employers that I've spoke to, and they just get frustrated when people don't disclose it until too late, and they've probably failed a test or not performed as well as they could have been. But if they'd had the reasonable adjustments in place, then it would have really helped them. So every employer I've ever spoke to is just encourage students to mention it up front, ask for what reasonable adjustment you require, or ask the organisation what can they put in place. And as you've heard from Sandra, organisations are getting really good at this. So they're there just to support. They don't want to put a hurdle to make you fail. It is there as support to make sure that you perform the best at recruitment and interview stage, because they just want to see who you are and what your abilities are.
May I add one further thing, Georgina, that's just occurred to me? So we also have a guaranteed interview scheme, and I just want to explain what it means and what it doesn't mean. So it doesn't mean that if you put in an application and you tick that box that you are guaranteed an interview. What it means is, let's say we have 50 applications for one job, all of them will be scored, and then let's say they intend to interview 8 people. If you pass that minimum bar, you become one of the 8, even if you haven't scored in the top 8. So that's where the guaranteed interview comes in. You still have to have an application that passes that minimum bar, but then it promotes your application. I'm not sure what happens if, say, they're going to interview 8 and 10 people are all opting for the guaranteed interview scheme. I think they are obliged then to run 10 interviews. But I just wanted to, that sometimes is helpful to clear up what it does mean and what it doesn't mean. Thank you.
No, thank you. We're quickly running out of time, so I've got 2 more questions to ask. So the next one is how to show your interest in a company at application and interview stage. And I think I'm going to touch on this with Sandra. Of you've mentioned the blind sifting. So how can you see people are interested? And then Aaron, just to get you thinking of ways that, obviously you reached out to Sandra after an event, but any other ways that you think of that you would show an interest in an organisation? So Sandra first.
It's a very good question, actually, because we blind sift based on the answers, it's not easy to actually show that, which is why my top advice is always contact the recruiting manager before you put your application in. You can then demonstrate over the phone or however you connect with that person why you've got an interest in their organisation, and then potentially if you can refer to that during the blind sift, you've obviously told them. Say for example, you might say, I've been volunteering in wildlife conservation for 10 years or something like that. But in our capabilities, you've only got 250 words. So you don't really want to use up words that are not scoring against the capability. But if you've had that conversation with the recruiting manager and explained, because of my volunteering, I've come across the EA, I'm really excited about it, or I'm interested in climate change, or whatever it is you've done, then you can just briefly refer to it. And that allows you kind of to have got more interest in advance. You could argue that negates the whole point of the blind sift, and I get why people might argue that, but as a recruiting manager, any extra things you can find out about your applicant beforehand just helps you make the right decision. We want the right people, not just those people who can write a really good application. So engaging with them in advance is how you also show. Once you get to interview, nearly always the first question is an icebreaker to get you chatting. And it is often something very much like, why have you applied for this job? And that's your opportunity. That's the floodgates open, in you go with why you're interested in that particular employer. And I've done many jobs before I joined the EA. And I have to say nearly all job interviews I've ever been to start with a question a little bit similar to that. Why have you come to our organisation, or why do you want this role? And that's when you can really get across your interest in the organisation. And you'd be amazed how many people say things like, well, you've got a good pension scheme. And you're just like, really? Is that it? So if you've had the opportunity to think about that a little bit, and maybe just even if you Google Environment Agency, you'd be amazed what you can pick up from that helps you answer that first question, because it puts the recruiters in a positive mindset about your enthusiasm before you start talking about the things that we're scoring you for. And if you look online, tips about recruitment, it's often about putting interviewers in a positive mind frame so that they are more likely to give you a good score.
Thank you. Aaron, do you want to add anything of something you might have done?
Yeah, I think it's really helpful to do a bit of investigating, find out what companies and businesses do, get in touch, see if you can pay them a visit. I was quite lucky the other day. There were 2 environment agency people clearing out the grill on the local brook, which actually flows under my front garden. So I went over and had a little chat with them and find out exactly what they were getting up to on their day's work, which is, you get another perspective there. So yeah, just be inquisitive, I guess.
Love that curiosity, and look into it. Anything else to add there, Alex, before I ask the final question?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I would definitely echo both what Aaron and Sandra have said. I mean, obviously we advertise on Opportunity Hub things like work experience opportunities, site visits, all those sorts of things would be great. I mean, attending a session like today is great, so you've learned so much about the Environment Agency just by attending this session today. Things like following them on social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, connecting on LinkedIn. You will find things there that aren't on the website. Doing things like maybe like the information on interviewing, which I've mentioned before, but also a speculative application is a demonstration, isn't it, that you've got that focused interest in that particular organisation. But yeah, also I think as well what Sandra said, being able to weave that in to the interview really does, you know, sort of help an interviewer think actually this person has gone the extra mile. So yeah, that's what I'd suggest.
Some great top tips there, and I'm going to finish with one final question for everyone to answer, and it is, what is your one piece of advice you'd give to STEM students or general OU students? What is your one piece of advice? I'm going to go to Aaron first, put you on the spot.
Just seek out those opportunities and explore them and see where they take you, because that can be very helpful.
Brilliant. And Sandra?
So I'm not sure I could just do one piece of thing. Two I'm going to go with. So one is, it's never too early to start making your applications. You don't have to wait for that result to come through. And the second one is always contact the recruiting manager mentioned in the application, in the advert, sorry, before you make your application. They could give you inadvertently some really key tips that you can get in your application and make yours shine above everybody else. I know I just said two, but there's one other thing, which is that the EA is always here. So it's an always opportunity. There's opportunities now on the jobs board. There will be more opportunities tomorrow and more the next day, because we're such a big organisation, we churn. So don't think you've missed out if you miss one thing. Just keep going. I'm sorry, that is it. I'm not going to say anything.
I'll let you off. Alex?
Oh, I'm going to have to say more than one now as well. I'm just following on from what Sandra was saying there about resilience and about, you know, sort of even if you apply once and it isn't successful, don't let that don't let that knock your confidence, and to maybe look at reapplying, because that really does demonstrate your resilience. So my one piece of advice would be, and again it's very similar, it's never too early to start career planning and making contacts. As I said earlier, it's really easy to talk yourself out of doing this sort of thing, but early planning really does avoid making those rushed decisions and often making mistakes. And also what I'd say as well, whatever stage you're at with your career, if you do have questions, get in contact with us to chat careers. That's what we're here for.
Absolutely. And my advice, I'll sneak two in. So one is Opportunity Hub is your friend. This is where we're gathering everything to put it on there. So please do use it. And just to highlight that it is accessible 1 week after your first module start date. So if you, for some reason you can't get in, it might be just because your module's not started. But yeah, have a look on there. We're adding things all the time. And my personal favourite is LinkedIn. Alex mentioned it. I love LinkedIn. Don't be scared of it. You can be somebody who just watches and just reads. You don't have to engage, but it's a great way to follow organisations, connect with employees in a job role that you might be interested in, or connecting with some OU alumni, ask the question. But it is brilliant, and feel free to link in with me. I'm happy to be linked in with. So we're out of time. I just want to say thank you to our guests, Sandra and Aaron, for taking up your time to sharing your experience of working with the careers team and how you've engaged. Alex, for sharing all the brilliant resources and continuing to support our students. Thank you ever so much. And we'd just like to wish thank you, our students, for attending, listening to this. We do wish you well with your studies, your future careers, and please do just get in touch. As Alex said, there's no daft questions. We'd love to hear from you, and we're just here to support you on this journey. So thank you ever so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.